Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and today it's my number 14 team in my 2024 NFL Deep Dive Series. It's the Indianapolis Colts. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss any of the future videos. And none of the next videos, it's almost done. We're all more than halfway there. And the Colts are one of those teams where it's a very, very interestingly built team. Now, I do kind of like their coaching staff. I think they're one of those coaching staffs where I think it's reflective of their current ranking. They're sort of right in the middle of the pack, maybe in the upper half of the league. I like the potential of it. Gus Bradley and Shane Steichen and Jim Bob Cooter, the greatest name in the history of coaches. It's a good group. It's a really good group there, in that upper half, like almost like a fringe top 10-ish. Like they're either just outside of it or just inside of it. It was hard to decide. It was very difficult to decide that. They have a very interestingly built roster. They have Anthony Richardson, last year's number 4 overall pick. He's coming back. You got to assume he's the starter, who couldn't be more opposite than the veteran backup Joe Flacco that they brought in. Joe Flacco really had a renaissance of his career, late renaissance there, really earned an opportunity to be a backup now. And I think it's going to do Anthony Richardson a lot of good because Joe Flacco, known for that strong arm, almost like a gunslinger type of a thing. And Anthony Richardson has very similar traits in that aspect in terms of like the arm strength and the arm talent in general. So being able to dial that in with Joe Flacco, who's been there so long, I think it'll be a great influence on Anthony Richardson, who you'll see I'm not very high on currently as a passer, just because he didn't come into the league as a great passer and he barely played last year. So it's a thing where reps are needed. But in terms of a runner, he changes everything. They still have Jonathan Taylor. They brought in Adonai Mitchell in the second round of the draft, a guy who had first round buzz. I think he's going to pair up really nicely with Michael Pittman. Josh Downs picked up a bit of an injury, but I don't think it's going to keep him out very long. Might miss the first week of the year, but I don't find it to be that significant. They've done a great job of building within the trenches. This is the real strength of this football team, is in the trenches. You're dealing with one of the best defensive and offensive lines in the entire NFL, with superstars like Quentin Nelson and Ryan Kelly, DeForest Buckner. Great stars in the league. Questionable in many other aspects of the defense in particular, and we'll get to that. This team, talent-wise, is very obviously tiered. They have some of the best units and some of the worst units, and you hope that together it can at least keep them alive in games. And I think that their ability to run the ball, as you're going to see, is going to be what keeps this team winning and in games that maybe they shouldn't be in, and allowing Anthony Richardson to get comfortable and develop. But it really all starts with the schemes that are going to have to be developed to protect their young players, protect their weaknesses, and that's all on this very good coaching staff. So let's talk about the head coach, Shane Steichen. He's my 14th ranked head coach. In that upper half of the league, he did a great job last year, considering the circumstances of what that team was dealing with the year prior, what they were becoming. I just really like what he did, and he transitioned, I think, quite well into being a head coach. I think the Colts team overachieved. They finished just about where I had projected them finishing the year prior, but a lot of people had them finishing as a bottom 10 team in the league. They were very competitive against a lot of teams they shouldn't have been. And I think now when you carry it over, you've added a couple of pieces here to strengthen some of the weaker parts of your team. You're hoping that a new year of health can assist and that you can continue to develop Anthony Richardson, which is the real task here of Shane Steichen, coming over from that Philadelphia team that was so incredibly good. And he's got an offensive coordinator in Jim Bob Cooter, who I believe was with the Lions for a long time. He was was he with the Lions? I feel like this is a Lion. He was with the Lions. I don't know why. I think, he worked with guys like Trevor Lawrence. I do believe he worked with Matthew Stafford. I don't feel like I'm making that up. He was the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach for the Detroit Lions, where he sort of made his name. He got some head coaching buzz. Things sort of fell off there for a bit. And now he's getting another chance. I really like bringing him in and pairing him with Shane Steichen to work with Anthony Richardson. You know, they did great work with Gardner Minshew the year prior. You know, that was his first year as the offensive coordinator was last season. So now with a quarterback with a much higher ceiling, with hopefully more time to work with him, maybe you know, dial back the running maybe a little bit, even though it's really what makes him great. And you really use, you know, the new weapons, Adonai Mitchell, you know, Jelani Woods hopefully can stay healthy. Josh Downs picked up an injury. He should be able to come back for week 1, if not week 2. Working with a great offensive line. There's just a lot to work here, and I think when you have this much talent around you, I think Jim Bob Cooter did much better than people expected with a lot less talent, especially in Detroit through those years. Outside of like Stafford and Calvin Johnson, who they didn't really have a whole lot of anybody for a lot of years there. So he was, and they did make the playoffs that one season. And so I think that he gets underestimated a bit. Maybe 7th is a little rich, but maybe I'm also judging Shane Steichen a little lower than other people have him. So maybe that evens things out there. They got Gus Bradley, who falls to at 15th of all defensive coordinators. Again, that's sort of like his floor for me, sort of like the head coach Shane Steichen. That's about where his floor is. I don't think he could be any worse than that. I wouldn't be mad if you put him in the top 10. He's got all this world experience. He's got head coaching experience. He's got great success as a defensive coordinator in the past. Relatively uninventive. I think that's what hurts his overall ranking for me. But I do believe that he has enough skill and knowledge and strategizing to be able to put together a really great defense, especially with some of the talent that they have. He's going to have to really work with his staff to develop guys on the back end. Just going over some of the positional coaches here of, you know, concern groups, I would say. You got Justin Hamilton, who's got 14 years experience. He's the assistant defensive backs coach. You also got where is he? You know, TJ Ingles is the assistant head coach, assistant to the head coach. I don't know if that counts as being an assistant head coach or not. You know, Brent Jackson's your quality control. Cato June is your linebackers coach. You know, they got interesting linebacker group, but not necessarily a high-end linebacker group. I think there's continuous development there. Tom Manning's got 19 years coaching experience. He's your tight ends coach. Ron Millis, 34 years experience. He's the defensive backs coach. He sort of oversees all that. So those coaches are the ones that really need to be putting the work in here. I think Richard Smith, 46 years experience. He's the linebackers and run game coordinator. So I would look for him as well to be the position coaches that you need to really highlight. And then, of course, there is another Colts legend as the wide receivers coach, and that's Reggie Wayne. So you look for him to continuously work with guys like Alec Pierce, getting Michael Pittman to the next level, sort of hovering around that low end number 1. Rookie Adonai Mitchell, Josh Downs, there's some talent there for him to work with as well. And Cam Turner, the quarterbacks coach, 15 years. We don't usually spend a lot of time going over positional coaches, but this guy's really the one that they're pointing to. Jim Bob Cooter, Cam Turner, Shane Steichen. Between the three of them, they need to get Anthony Richardson up to speed. And they got some great play out of Gardner Minshew last year. That cannot be denied. You know, he's worked with Kyler Murray in the past as a quarterbacks coach. He mentored Kyler Murray when he won the Offensive Rookie of the Year award. So there is that. He was in Carolina as an assistant quarterbacks coach when Cam Newton was there. This was after Cam Newton's MVP season, Super Bowl run, so it's hard to really judge that. He was part of the staff that went there, in 2015, but he didn't really have a truly defined role. He had just come over from Florida International. So this is a real task for him. If Anthony Richardson can develop as a passer that's like a top 20 caliber passer this year, I would look for him to be looking at some offensive coordinator jobs perhaps, because that's a great development. That's exactly what they need this group to be. But I think overall this coaching staff is quite good. Like I said in the intro, are they top 10? Are they not top 10? Having them tied for 10th, just on that fringe of the top 10, I think is the perfect spot for this staff as of right now. And here's the real centerpiece that's going to be driving this team forward. And that's Anthony Richardson. He's the guy that raises the ceiling here. He's coming in as my last ranked quarterback of all the starters, just in terms of his passing ability. As a straight up drop back passer, he got all the Josh Allen comparisons coming in his rookie year. I thought that was very fair. He just didn't play a lot last year, like I have said before. So he just needs reps, I feel, at this point. And they gave him a better group of weapons than what he had last year. The offensive line gets another full year together. They mixed in some rookies, which we'll get to. We'll see how those guys develop. And I think he's got a much better mentor than he had last year. Not taking anything away from Gardner Minshew, but Joe Flacco is a Super Bowl winning quarterback who's had a lot of success in his career, despite what people want to say. And he was always a quarterback that he was like, during his best years, he was sort of like what Kirk Cousins became, where he was a reliable quarterback to have, really raised the floor of your team. And I think he would honestly do the same thing here if he ended up on this team. He would raise the floor up, I think, a little bit higher than what Anthony Richardson gives them, but the ceiling just wouldn't be that high. Anthony Richardson gives you that Super Bowl contender level of ceiling. He just needs to develop. He needs to be in the film room. He needs to get out there in the field, get those 60, 70 play games where then he can go back on a Monday, pick apart every single little thing, work on those nuances that he needs to develop as a true passer in the league. But even him coming in, the ceiling is still, I think, really high, just because he's the fourth best quarterback run threat. Gets a 90 grade here. I talked about it last year when I was going over this team, that the combination of him along with Jonathan Taylor, it's just a match made in heaven. And it gives you so many numbers advantages in the run game. You're forcing guys to focus on the quarterback, that when you have a guy like Joe Flacco in, for example, they know Joe Flacco's not keeping the ball and running. So it sort of eliminates that possibility and allows them to play a more traditional defense against, the run game than they would here, where now they have to have a player dedicated to Anthony Richardson at all times. It's going to be a linebacker. It's going to be a linebacker who's a great athlete. So you're going to need a second linebacker out there, really, that's also a great athlete, to be able to keep up with a guy like Jonathan Taylor, to be able to get off those key blocks, to be able to bring Taylor down. So it does give you a tremendous advantage. Again, Richardson just needs to be healthy and be on the field for this at all to work. The passing game definitely improves early, at least for, I would say, maybe the first half to 3/4 of the season if Joe Flacco was just the quarterback. But the potential of what this passing game could look like at the end of the year, with Anthony Richardson getting 14, 15 games into the season, what he could look like. You saw it with Jordan Love last year. With Jordan Love, once he started to get the reps, got some games underneath him, he gradually improved. He looked terrible, and then he improved. And then he looked like a top 5 quarterback by the end of the year. I'm not saying Anthony Richardson's going to look like a top 5 quarterback by the end of the year, but I think he could be looking like a upper half of the league quarterback by the end of the year. And as long as it all averages out to him being and playing like a top 20 quarterback in the NFL, then I think this team will live up to this projection and be that fringe playoff team in a really tough conference. But I think they might just fall just short, but I think they can finish with a winning record and, that 8th seed spot where, you realize, okay, we're just a couple more pieces away. You can sort of pick apart your roster a little bit and really refine it. And you give Richardson that extra development. You could be easily a top 10 team and a playoff team and competing with Houston for the division come next season. Moving on to their backfield, and we'll start with their running attack. It's third in the league, so you're mixing the 4th ranked rushing quarterback with the 3rd ranked running back group here with Jonathan Taylor. A healthy Jonathan Taylor is one of the best. Top 5 at worst. I have him 3rd. It's a tight race. There's a tight race below Christian McCaffrey, we'll say that, between a lot of guys. Trey Sermon is a decent backup. He's definitely the early down backup, while you got Tyler Goodson, Evan Hull be competing for the backup role to Taylor in like 3rd down passing situations, which Taylor's still the best guy, but he hasn't performed at the level that we like to see. Now, he is 31st right now, but he could easily get up into that top 20 with just slight improvements. Like, it's all really tight here. I didn't do like point grades. Like, I didn't do like 70.1 or 70.3. If I did, I think that the overall grades of the receiving backs would look a lot closer, but I just went with general, straight up, solid, even numbers here. But I think if I was doing that, the difference between Jonathan Taylor at a 69 and probably like the 15th ranked receiving back would be like a 0.6 or 0.7. So it wouldn't be that significant. So don't get, too demoralized by this number. I think Jonathan Taylor can improve in this sense. I think Evan Hull, this would be a perfect opportunity, to move Taylor around. I still think if you get the ball in Taylor's hands in space, obviously, in the screen game, it's just an extension of the run game at that point, and then you are getting this type of quality out of him, especially with how great that offensive line is. So I wouldn't be at all concerned overall about this rushing attack. He's just not the complete every down back that you get out of a Christian McCaffrey, for example. And I'm sorry, no one's Christian McCaffrey, so it's hard to really say that to criticize Jonathan Taylor as a back at all and not say this isn't a great running back to have. He's one of the most desirable ones. And you just hope that he can get back to that level where people were giving him MVP considerations. He hasn't been all that healthy since then. So you hope that, this can be back to, 17 games from Jonathan Taylor. You can work on his running load as well, because, again, you have Anthony Richardson here who can pick up a lot of carries. Anthony Richardson could have 15 carries in a game, and then Jonathan Taylor could be looking at somewhere like 17, 18 carries a game, depending on the certain situations. And then you can work in Trey Sermon. You can keep games short, and I think that's going to be part of the strategy of this team, is to really involve Taylor and Sermon and Anthony Richardson as running backs. Even Tyler Goodson would qualify for me as being a great addition to the backfield, get a couple carries every now and then. Keep games short, play to your strengths here, which is great offensive line play and great running of the ball. So I think that will be their strategy throughout this year as they slowly get Anthony Richardson used to being a passer. And so a lot of the weight here is going to fall on this backfield, specifically Jonathan Taylor. Going on to their weapons group, and we'll start with the wide receivers. They are 16th in the league for me, so smack dab right there in the middle. Michael Pittman, like I said, he's sort of like a low-end number 1 receiver. They drafted Adonai Mitchell in the 2nd round. He's going to be a great complement to him on the other side, on the outside. Josh Downs picked up an injury in training camp. He is likely to miss week 1 at this point, so I would expect him to come in week 2, week 3 at the latest. So I don't see a significant issue with that injury that really drags down this group at all, to be honest. You like Michael Pittman there on the outside. He has really great performances, and then he'll just disappear during games. And you'll see him just not separating, not getting open. He'll have games where he's not, winning contested catches. He's not running across the middle with as much vitriol and aggression as you would like to see from somebody like him. And then there's other games where he looks like he could easily be a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. So finding that level of consistency with him is really important. I think consistency in the quarterback play does play a role in Pittman sort of stagnating in a sense in terms of his development, like sort of peaking at when he did and not really being able to get over that hump. I think as Anthony Richardson gets more playing time and develops more, you could see Michael Pittman get into that like top 15, top 10 wide receiver conversation very easily. You know, the traits are all there. Getting the consistent quarterback play, I think, will allow him to continue to consistently develop and perform as well. I think having a great complement like Adonai Mitchell will help with that as well. They've always been sort of looking for a great complement for him since they drafted him. They thought it was Josh Downs. Josh Downs more of a pure slot guy, that little gadget slot player. You got Adonai Mitchell now, who I think is the complement they were hoping Alec Pierce was going to be, who sort of now hovers around being wide receiver 4 for them. I think Ashton Doolin is a sneaky player who could, he's got like that high floor where he's sort of like a more reliable substitution at wide receiver. They also got Anthony Gold, a rookie. So Alec Pierce, this is the time for him to solidify his spot on this roster, because they've put together a group here. They've drafted 3 wide receivers, I believe, Downs, Adonai Mitchell, and Gold, since bringing Alec Pierce onto the team. So he needs to start really stepping up, because they have set up an environment here where he's replaced. So when he gets opportunities, particularly I think those opportunities are going to come in week 1, with Josh Downs being likely out for that week. And, and all these opportunities he's going to get in training camp now and in the preseason with Josh Downs being out. This is the real opportunity for him. And if he doesn't show them anything, I think he could potentially fall way down this draft board, especially if you get Doolin or Gold who step up and start making plays in the next couple of weeks. That's really going to put Alec Pierce at a tremendous disadvantage. You got Adonai Mitchell, who's playing with a super chip on his shoulder. I'm not so sure Alec Pierce will surpass him. Adonai Mitchell, for all we know, with his attitude coming in after feeling like he got slighted in the draft, which may or may not be true, he could be somebody who could completely outperform Michael Pittman and become the team's true number 1 receiver. That's all on the table here for Adonai Mitchell, and depending on who Anthony Richardson can develop all this chemistry with in the next month, we could see an Adonai Mitchell becoming a wide receiver 1 on this team. I think that's nice and wide open here due to all the reasons that I gave previously with Michael Pittman. And then you move on to the tight end room, and it's just not a high-end room. They're tied for 30th. Jelani Woods is like this red zone threat, big athletic tight end. I like him to be the starter. But it is a very tight room. You can see all the grades there. There really isn't a significant difference to me between any of these 4 tight ends that I have listed here. Mo Alley-Cox has the veteran edge on all of them. He's sort of been a mainstay for the Indianapolis Colts. But you're hoping Jelani Woods, another guy who needs to stay healthy for an entire season, that maybe because of his giant catch radius and his ability to up the middle of the field, up the seams and whatnot, that Anthony Richardson, being that big, strong arm quarterback, will be able to utilize him in ways that Matt Ryan and Gardner Minshew weren't able to previously. This is really another opportunity for Jelani Woods, the same way it would be for Michael Pittman. I think Jelani Woods is much more likely to be replaced, obviously, than Michael Pittman is. They've invested a lot more in Pittman. Will Mallory, Kylan Granson. Kylan Granson is sort of like hovering around being that number 1 tight end too. You see his development coming along really slowly. Again, a lot of these guys in the tight end room are higher floor guys. I think Jelani Woods does have the lowest floor out of all of them. But I also think it's undeniable he has the highest ceiling. I think that's why he's going to be getting all the opportunities more so than anyone else when he is healthy. But overall, it is a, slightly below middle of the pack weapons group in terms of the wide receivers and the tight ends combined. But I do really like the ceiling here, and I think early on in the year, we're going to see a lot of growing pains from the weapon, specifically because of inconsistent quarterback play in the passing game. That's sure to be there. But I think the offensive line, which we're about to get to, is going to bail them out of a lot of situations and set them up for a lot more success, and again, help them raise the floor of what this offense could be throughout the year. So this is my number one pass blocking offensive line in the entire league. Absolutely fantastic group. Ryan Kelly, one of the best centers in the NFL. Quentin Nelson, that veteran presence, really great in the passing game. Braden Smith, super reliable right tackle. I look at him and you see a lot of, he's like a Caleb McGarry type of a player where you get this really great pass blocking and then elite level run blocking from him. And we'll get to that. Bernard Raymond is the perfect example of not judging tackles by their rookie season, not expecting every offensive tackle to be Tristan Wirfs in their rookie year, because his rookie year was atrocious. And then last year he came out and he looked like every bit of a number one tackle in the league that was getting first round hype during the draft process, in the mock draft communities and on ESPN and all that. People were talking about this guy. Once he got up to NFL speed throughout last year, he really started to shine as a top level left tackle, and it raised this group up back to what they were before, because they had that 1 year where they looked really bad just a year previous. They were not great, and then now they come in, and this last season they were so great, and I expect that to continue to develop that way. The real competition is going to be at right guard, which right now I have Will Fries being your starting right guard. I think it's a safe pick there, but they drafted Tanner Bortolini, who in this situation I think would be a really reasonable guy to bring in to start. I think him and Will Fries are relatively the same in terms of their ability in pass blocking. They also got Matt Goncalves, who puts Blake Freeland in a very rough situation. I have Blake Freeland projected really high coming out of BYU just last year. He didn't really perform when given the opportunity. So he's sort of hovering around being this, at best, fourth tackle on the team, with the rookie Goncalves coming in, and he's going to get some opportunities to compete in that sense. Dalton Tucker's another interior offensive lineman. Arlington Hambright, another interior offensive lineman. Wesley French is your backup center. But I do expect the top four guys that are listed here to make the team. I think Arlington Hambright as a backup center or Dalton Tucker as a backup center is a reasonable place to be. And if they are going to value the passing game, which I do think that they'll favor more pass blocking types in the offensive line, especially in terms of offensive line depth, just because of the direction they're going to want to take this team throughout the season and into the next couple of years, it does put some of these guys that you see towards the bottom in a rougher situation. As we get to the run blocking, they're fourth in the league for me in run blocking. You see a step back from Quentin Nelson. You see a significant step back from Will Fries. But you see Braden Smith take a giant leap up. It really helps solidify this line. Bernard Raymond was even really great run blocking. Quentin Nelson gets a lower grade, but I mean, him playing this year, if he can continue to get back to that top level, he could easily come back to being, the second or third best run blocker on the team. But listing him as the fourth best run blocker on the team speaks to how highly I think this offensive line can perform. The best pass blockers, fourth in run blocking, probably equals out to being the best overall offensive line in the entire league going into this year. You get to some of the depth, Arlington Hambright, again, is your best depth option here. Bortolini and Tucker lose a lot for me in run blocking, which is why Will Fries, I list him as the starter for right now, because I do believe overall he is the best option. He's better than Bortolini by just, I would say slightly. I would give his experience a big reason as to why I would put him just that slight point higher in pass blocking, but he does have a significantly better run blocking ability. that Bordelini is going to have to develop here in the next month or so. And then Tucker and Calves, they are all rookies coming into the league. And usually when you get these rookie offensive linemen who aren't like the top picks in the draft, they are generally quite poor at one aspect of their responsibilities, whether it be in the pass game or the run game. But I don't expect any of them to be punished for struggling in the run game. I expect all three of them to make the team, Hambright being the fourth guy. Blake Freeland, I think, is significantly on the hot seat. Wesley French just being a backup center, again, gives him, I think, more opportunities over a Josh Sills and Jack Anderson here. Definitely over a Blake Freeland. But if they can find a backup center in Hambright or Tucker or Bordelini, then that puts Wesley French on the outs for me. But there's just not much else you can really say. Get one of the best run blocking tackles, in the league. You get one of the best overall centers in the league, one of the best pass blocking guards in the league, one of the top 15 to top 10 left tackles in the league. It's just a great situation to be in, and this is one of the things they've done so well about building on this team, and more importantly than that, recovering from that down year that they had, where they looked absolutely horrific. They did a great job in that sense too. So this is really what's going to be driving this offense, and when you have a great offensive line, there really is no amount of bad your offense can perform. Like, you can't, they will never be, to me, they can't be anything other than the top half of the league in total offense by the end of the season, just because of how great the offensive line is. The offensive line being this good doesn't allow them to play worse than that. So you go to the positional summaries here, and you can see the passing game is going to be the issue here. The offensive line is really great, but there's a lot of development that needs to happen in that sense. The depth is okay for some of the position groups there. You get into the run game, that's what's really going to drive this group. Unfortunately, the wide receiver and tight end blocking is not going to be that high, the tight end blocking especially. So maybe they can find someone in free agency throughout camp, or maybe one of these tight ends develops into a really good pass blocking tight end that can then further enhance the running game. But overall, this is the 20th ranked offense for me in total, 29th passing offense, which I think was an expected grade just based on all the things I listed, but the 4th best run offense. This is an offense designed to keep games short, keep games fast. Playing in Lucas Oil Stadium, I think it's going to be a real fast track throughout most of the season this year. And then when they get to play in Houston, which is indoors, they get to play in the warm weather of Jacksonville and Tennessee, so they're going to be able to really execute their strengths within their division and within their home field throughout most of the year, which is why it really helps them get to this 14th overall grade, despite having a 20th ranked total offense. Moving on to the defense here, we'll start with the edge rushers. They are the 17th ranked edge rushers for me. Latu, Taekwon Lewis, they get the same grade for me in terms of their edge rushing. I did like their depth quite a bit. Samson Ebukam picking up that injury is huge, though. So Deo, Adeyingbo, and Kwity Paye are going to end up being this is really now the top 4 defensive linemen that you have with Ebukam out. And I think everyone is going to have their role within this defense. I do think Deo is sort of your 3rd edge player for across all 3 downs in all situations. Because when you get to against the run, that's when Kwity Paye really steps up. He's your best option in that sense, especially with Ebukam out. And then Taekwon Lewis sort of takes over. Deo is your 3rd edge rusher there. I could see him getting some reps if he can continue to develop against the run. But you get Latu, you get Paye, you get Taekwon Lewis. I think those will be the guys who you'll see get the most and highest snap counts out of everyone, especially now, again, with Ebukam out. That was such a huge injury. But you're hoping Kwity Paye can develop. You spent a 1st-round pick on him a couple of years back, and he sort of, he hasn't really shown anything. Again, solid on early downs. But, Liatu Latu pretty much got drafted to be the number one edge player on this team that they were hoping Kwity Paye was, that he's just not turned out to be. Maybe becoming more of a early down guy and then a situational, substitution in more traditional passing situations will help him, keep his legs a lot fresher. And then Tyquan Lewis gets to be your straight up edge guy. But Kwity Paye and Liatu Latu as a combination are in the top 10 for edge rooms against the run. There's just this weird drop down for the edge players against the pass. Liatu Latu, more of a 3-4 outside linebacker coming in, playing a more traditional hand in the dirt defensive end. Will be a slight, I would say a slight transitional period for him. But I do think he is overall undoubtedly the best one that they got of the entire room. And he's going to be complemented really well because of what they got going on in the interior. And we saw this with the offensive line, that they developed a really great offensive line. They've done it with the defensive line as well, because this interior group is fantastic. They're tied for third for me. DeForest Buckner, one of the best interior rushers in the entire league. One of the best interior defensive linemen, period, in the entire league. Grover Stewart really shines in run stuffing in the run game on early downs. But I still think he's very serviceable here, as he's as good as some number ones are on other teams as an interior rusher. You get Taven Bryan, who's going to be a good little substitution there. Raekwon Davis picked up an injury, so that's why he's in the red as well. So they picked up some injuries here on the defensive line, but they've done a really good job of having some depth there, which is why the impact of it, I don't know, is going to be as significant as it would be for another team. Adeto Adebayor, he's another guy who got some weird first round buzz for a while just because of his versatility. They drafted him. He's settling in here as an interior defensive lineman. Maybe he becomes more of a, early down defensive end type, and then kicks inside only on passing situations. I do feel like that's probably better for him, because when you see his grade for against the run, it's absolutely horrific. But look at this amazing 1-2 punch they have with Grover Stewart and DeForest Buckner, second best run stuffers in the league. And it's only because they don't have the true top 2, top 3 run stuffer out of this group. I think in terms of a 1-2 punch, they're right up there with everybody. Really good balance in this group. Not a lot of depth against the run, which is a concern. But you hope that you can manipulate a front four that really accentuates the strengths of what you have going on here with the interior group. Probably overall the best interior defensive group in the league to complement probably overall the best offensive line. So these two things, really winning in the trenches, is what they're going to be able to do throughout most of this year. And I think that does help them compete with a lot of the better teams that on a pure talent level are better than them. But they have this foundation in their front four and on their offensive line that's just going to, again, raise the floor of what they could be. And now it's really up to the coaching staff to develop these other situations, because now as we get to other position groups here on the defense, you're going to see that they're not nearly as good as what we have here, which is the edge group and the interior defensive line group in the top 10, 3 out of the 4 possibilities of play, and an interior defensive line that's in the top 5, top 3 in all aspects of the game. Coming to the linebackers here, there's the linebackers in coverage. They're tied for 27th. Zaire Franklin is the traditional linebacker in this situation. Ronnie Harrison, a converted safety. He's like a safety / linebacker. He's like a dime linebacker. He'll play up close to the line of scrimmage in true passing situations. Segun Olubi and EJ Speed I think could easily surpass him at some point. I think because they are more traditional linebackers than Ronnie Harrison is. I think it could open up things for the defense a lot better. But Gus Bradley, he's so used to having great linebacker play that, you know, you're hoping that he can continue to develop these guys. Because Zaire Franklin's had some pretty good years. I just think the depth drags down the overall group more than anything else. You know, when you get into linebackers against the run, this is when EJ Speed gets to take a step in, but they're still tied for 30th here in that sense. And I know Colts fans aren't going to really like that grade, but I think there is a lot to be desired here. I think their depth is okay. The depth really helps raise the floor of this. Like tied for 30 is basically the floor here, because I think between Speed, Franklin, McGrone, and Alubi, you can get 3 linebackers out of that in a base formation. You can get 2 guys in a 4-2 front that, you know, you can really sub any of them in at any time and you're not going to lose anything. But I think that this is a team that's in need, in my opinion, of someone to really break out and stand out. I think that Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed, just because the expectations of them have been really low, it's fooled people into thinking that they're better than what they actually are. And I think that also with how good that interior defensive line is in particular, it also sets this group up for a lot more success than they would otherwise. If this was the linebacking group that existed in, for example, with the Chargers, then I would be really concerned about this defense in general. But because there's going to be so much free running at ball carriers and so much pressure and pocket collapsing from that interior defensive line, that it'll help this linebacker group, you know, get to a higher level of play than maybe their talent would dictate in other situations. Now the defensive backs, will start with the corners. They're 28th for me, this cornerback group. They're just lacking a number one corner that makes me, you know, take pause for a second, you know. Like Kenny Moore is a really good corner in the NFL, but if he's your best, then there is a problem. And, you know, they are in a process of trying to develop guys. You know, Juju Brents, drafted last year, you're hoping you can develop him into something. Losing Isaiah Rodgers to that gambling stuff was a tremendous shot against this group. You know, losing Stephon Gilmore, shot against this group. There's a lot of steps back they've taken from being a group that was quite good to now being a group that is maybe a couple years away from being like a top half of the league quality group. And you're hoping that the strength of the front four makes up for a lot of the deficiencies you're going to have here on this back end. You know, Dallas Flowers, you know, is sneaking up as your number 3. You know, you got Micah Abraham and Jalen Simpson, who you've added. Jalen Jones from a year before. There's just a lot of youth here, and a lot of time needed. This looks eerily similar to what we saw with their wide receiver group. You know, except the wide receiver group had a little bit more higher end talent. It's still one of those groups where you're like, they just need more time. They just need more reps. It's like Anthony Richardson, you know, as a drop back passer. He just needs more time, because I really like Brents. I really like Jalen Jones. Micah Abraham, I think, is surprisingly underrated, and I think that he could become something. I just don't know if it's in his rookie year. Jalen Simpson, same thing. Kenny Moore is a veteran, but he's as good as he's ever going to be. I don't see Kenny Moore becoming all of a sudden a much significantly better player than what he is right now. So that's a concern for this defense in general. Again, you're hoping that front four can perform at a level where it'll make up for this and allow these guys to play a lot more based on athleticism and instincts, and not allow a lot of double moves on the outside that can get them caught. Not put them in situations where they got to think too much or be in coverage for too long, and build some confidence there and give them more opportunities to succeed, where they aren't just getting beaten to death down the field, because you're going to run into situations like Houston has right now, with Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell and Nico Collins and John Mechie and Robert Woods that will overwhelm this group if that front four doesn't get home. And it could be a long day for this defense and this team in general in those types of games. So it's a group that is very reliant on that front four, and this is what makes me very concerned about this team in general. You get to the safety group, tied for 25th. Julian Blackmon got brought back. Nick Cross, Daniel Scott got hurt. That was like a true to the game, deep third center field safety option. That's just doesn't look like. Don't know if he's going to even play out. I forget what his injury was. Maybe it was an Achilles. I can't quite recall on the spot here. But again, not a lot of depth. Nick Cross has not shown that he can play necessarily in coverage. He is a very good run support safety, but they don't have anyone other than him in that safety group that can play against the run. They are 28th in that sense. So this overall secondary group is just not good. They're probably overall a bottom 5 group in the league, which is going to make them suffer in these games. And it's going to make things a lot harder for them on the offensive side of the ball to play to their strengths, because if teams are able to throw the ball all over this team, then they're not going to be keeping scores low. And it's going to force Anthony Richardson in that offense to start throwing the ball more, which isn't playing to their strengths, especially it won't be early in the year. You have to anticipate that. So it's kind of like the wide receiver group, just in need of somebody breaking out in this season and doing it early to really help keep this team in games early on in the season. And then you look at the cornerback group against the run there. They get a D grade. Again, just the back end is the fear here. You know, the front four, it's hard to ask for much better in the entire NFL. There's very few groups that overall would rank higher than them in the front four. It's everything going on behind us. The other 7 guys that are going to be on the field other than that front four, that really makes me nervous about what this overall defense can achieve this year. So overall, it is my 25th ranked defense, 28th against the pass, 16th against the run. Overall, again, really elevated by that front four. Desperate need for someone on the back end to become a breakout star. So their overall rank is 14th in the entire league, with the 20th offense, 25th defense, and the tied for 10th ranked coaching staff. A coaching staff that has put together a team that they can play to some strengths here. And I think that does, again, raise the possibilities of what this team could be with great play in the trenches. And there you have it, my number 14 team in my 2024 NFL Deep Dive Series, the Indianapolis Colts. Tell me what you think in the comment section below. You made it this far after all. You can leave a thumbs up. You've made it this far after all. You can do those 2 things if you've made it this far and you're looking at me after almost an hour of potentially listening to me talk, unless you scrolled through the chapters, and that's fine. You can do the same on this video here or this playlist here, which is the entire series and all the videos, so you don't miss any of the videos. And you can comment and like all the videos and then subscribe right there. Perfect. I'll see you guys in the next video next time. Bye.